A massive opening day of free agency for the Blackhawks. All discussed Teuvo Teravainen returning to Chicago and the other signings made by Kyle Davidson.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As usual, just a reminder off the top to please go and hit that like button. Comment down below as well as to your thoughts on a crazy opening day of free agency for the Blackhawks. Be sure to subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube as well. That's the best way that you can show some support and the best way so that you don't miss out on any of the Blackhawks related content that I'm posting here on a daily basis, Monday through Friday, and even on Saturdays sometimes. I'm grinding always to make sure you get the Blackhawks content that you deserve. It's been a hectic last handful of days. Of course, the NHL Draft on Friday, day one, day two going on Saturday. I just got back from covering a golf tournament up in Detroit. Quick turnaround here this morning after a 6-hour drive home. Got back around midnight last night, and then bing, boom, first thing this morning, we got free agency. I do it all for you Blackhawks fans out there, so please make sure to go and hit that subscribe button for me. It makes the grind and all worth it. And again, it won't cost you anything, 100% free, and really does help me out tremendously. Last but certainly not least, real quick, got to let you all know, today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. Sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get daily boosts and bonuses all summer long. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. I hope everyone watching or listening to this right now had themselves a lovely weekend, found a little bit of beauty amidst the chaos, as I outlined. A busy Friday and Saturday, day one on Friday night, day two, the 2nd through 7th rounds going down on Saturday. And then, oh yeah, free agency here this morning. It has been an absolute whirlwind. But I got to say, Blackhawks fans, vibes got to be pretty high for all of you out there tuning into this episode, considering what has gone down here on the first day of free agency. I didn't imagine it going this way for the Blackhawks. And, you know, in my free agent previews that I've been releasing over the last couple of weeks in terms of what we can expect to see general manager Kyle Davidson do once the market opens on the morning of July 1st, I mentioned, I thought they absolutely needed to go and get a true top 6 forward. I mean, adding Ilya Mikheyev, Sam Lafferty, who, as we've learned now, did not ultimately wind up signing a deal with the Blackhawks. He hit the free agent market, signed with the Buffalo Sabres, but bringing in those two, getting Hall and Athanasiou back healthy, that wasn't going to be enough for this Blackhawks offense to take the leap this organization wants to in their rebuild, right? Like, it's time to start winning games. It's time to start taking that next step. Those additions weren't going to be the ones that moved the needle enough to reach those goals. So I expected the Blackhawks to go and get a notable top 6-ish forward, maybe not a Sam Reinhart or a Steven Stamkos, Jake Gensel, right? Like, I never thought they were in the boat for those guys, but they needed to get someone in the top 6. I expected them to add a veteran defenseman to shore up the second pairing with Kevin Korchinski. And then maybe they could go out and add a veteran goaltender to maybe put some pressure on the heels of Arvid Soderblom a little bit. Maybe someone like a James Reimer or a Casey DeSmith were a couple of names that I mentioned the last time I talked about free agent options on Friday, but never in my wildest dreams did I envision free agency going the way that it did for the Blackhawks, but it was a very pleasant surprise nonetheless. And the dominoes started falling early on in the morning, Blackhawks fans. First thing when I woke up, legitimately within the first handful of minutes that I got up this morning, got a little bit extra sleep as I didn't get in from Detroit until around midnight last night, but boom, first domino falls for the Blackhawks. Tyler Bertuzzi, a little bit unsurprising, someone who I had mentioned as a potential target for the Hawks in their forward group, but admittedly wasn't among my favorites. I was curious as to kind of whether, considering his off-the-ice antics, the Blackhawks would be willing to go that direction, but ultimately they did, and they felt confident enough in Bertuzzi to give him a 4-year contract with a $5 million AAV. I'll get into that a little bit more here in just a second. But for those who aren't familiar with Bertuzzi, he's a 6'1", 190-pound winger who's going to turn 30 in February and was a second-round pick a handful of years ago for the Detroit Red Wings back in 2017. This past year, he tallied 43 points, 21 goals, and 22 assists in 80 games for the Toronto Maple Leafs, his lone season in Toronto. And the year prior, he had 30 points, 8 goals, and 22 assists in 50 combined games for the Detroit Red Wings and the Boston Bruins. He got dealt to Boston at the trade deadline. But really what the Hawks are hoping for is that Bertuzzi will be able to find the gear and the level that he was showing prior to him getting dealt to the Bruins, particularly in the 2021-2022 campaign, in which he posted career highs across the board, 30 goals, 62 points, right? Was a really dominant offensive player for the Red Wings. And he had shown flashes of that his first couple years into the league. His first full NHL campaign, he had 47 points. The next year, he followed that up with 48. The last few, ever since, it's been a little bit of an offensive struggle for him, but he is absolutely someone who could go and jump up and down the lineup, maybe even as a winger alongside Connor Bedard with some sandpaper there, or someone who can provide a little bit of offense down in the bottom six. But I think he plays a style that's intriguing to the Blackhawks front office and general manager Kyle Davidson, right? He plays with speed. He doesn't lack any size. He provides that grit, provides that sandpaper, and crashes the net hard, scores a lot of goals there, makes a lot of hard-working type plays, capable passer as well, maybe a little bit of a capped upside. I don't know if he's going to be a 50-point guy ever really here in Chicago, but could get an opportunity to play with Bedsy, and is someone that I think this coaching staff will be comfortable playing in a lot of different roles. So Tyler Bertuzzi's addition certainly addresses a need here for the Blackhawks. As far as a grade I would give this signing, I'd give it a B. The only concern that I have is the term, right? 4 years for Bertuzzi, who's going to be 30 by the end of this year. He'll be 33, 34 years old in the final deals of that contract. And considering his inconsistencies throughout his career, like, this is one of those deals that it might look good this year, and then if the numbers drop off, it might look atrocious. Like, it kind of has that type of potential, but I do think Bertuzzi can provide a lot of different impacts, and that's what encouraged Kyle Davidson to still be able to give out this type of deal to him. We'll see how it looks in hindsight, but hopefully Bertuzzi will be able to find that offensive game that he flashed early on in his career with Detroit. The important moves didn't stop there, though, up front for the Blackhawks. Teuvo Teravainen was the next domino to fall, officially returning back to the team that drafted him. Of course, he was the 18th overall pick for the Blackhawks back in 2012. Played his first 3 campaigns over in North America here in the Blackhawks organization, and was also a huge part of that 2015 Stanley Cup winning team. I mean, remember the impacts that Teuvo Teravainen and Antoine Vermette made in games 1 and 2 of that series against the Tampa Bay Lightning? I mean, that's what made it so painful to see the guy go. And since the Hawks traded him as part of that cap casualty deal to move Brian Bickle all those years ago, Teravainen's turned into a very solid pro over his last 8 years with the Hurricanes. This past year, he had 53 points, 25 goals, and 28 assists in 76 games. Only 37 points, though, the year prior in 68 games worth of action, but was a 60-point guy in 4 of his first 6 seasons with the Hurricanes. Still provides some good offensive firepower, more of a passer, which I think we kind of saw coming throughout his development. He can score goals, but he is more of a pass-first type of player, but also plays with some speed. He lacks a little bit of size, but is all in all a pretty good forechecker, a good defensive player, can play on the penalty kill, can play on the second power play unit. He's also someone that can provide a little bit of versatility and is responsible on the defensive side of things. Matured rather nicely in terms of how he's developed into a good two-way pro since joining the Carolina Hurricanes. I said when I went through Teuvo Teravainen as a potential option, he wouldn't be my favorite pick of the litter, and that's more so because I did wonder if this new regime was kind of worried that they were going to be like the old one. And also, Teuvo throughout his career, because of his lack of size, hasn't been the best playoff performer. But quite honestly, with a 3-year deal here at $5.4 million, I don't know if he's going to be part of the Blackhawks squad when they're playing playoff games. So I don't really have a problem with this type of deal whatsoever. I think it makes sense to bring someone with Teuvo's speed and skill into this offense that desperately needs it. A shorter term deal, maybe I would have liked a 2-year contract better, but if it was a third year that got Teuvo to be willing to come back here, I'm not going to have any arguments with that whatsoever. I'm going to give this one a B+ in terms of the grade for the signing. Next up, we got Laurent Brossoit. Not someone that I thought was going to be on the Blackhawks radar whatsoever in terms of the backup goaltender options, but boy, I'm glad he was. And it's a 2-year, $3.3 million AAV deal for Laurent Brossoit, who's a 6'3" goaltender, a 6th-round pick way back in 2011, kind of bounced around for a couple of teams, most notably with the Winnipeg Jets. In this past year in Winnipeg, a really outstanding season, 15-5-2, with a 2.00 goals against, .927 save percentage, and 3 shutouts in 23 games worth of action behind Connor Hellebuck as his backup. Also went 7-0-3 with a 2.17 goals against, .927 save percentage once again in 11 games worth of NHL action the year prior with the Vegas Golden Knights. He doesn't have much of a sample size, I will say, is he's only played 20 games in the NHL 3 times in his career. And is, a veteran goaltender at this point. But I do think there's undoubtedly upside there. And this is a feasible backup to kind of take some of the stress off of Peter Mrazek's shoulders. I'd envision Brossoit getting, ideally 30 to 40 starts here in his first year with the Blackhawks, and that's much needed, right? The Blackhawks needed someone to kind of relieve the pressure off of Mrazek's shoulders and someone who can just be a serviceable backup, because Arvid Soderblom could not do that job last year. This ultimately means that Soderblom will be going back down to Rockford, but, kind of think that's the right decision there. He clearly wasn't ready for the NHL level last year. The ultimate ramification of this, though, is that Jackson Stauber with Soderblom going back down to Rockford, they obviously have Drew Commesso there. Jackson Stauber didn't wind up getting a QO from the Blackhawks on Sunday. As far as this deal goes, though, I give it an A+. Like, I am pleasantly surprised that they were able to nab a goaltender. I don't want to say of this caliber because, again, Brossoit is still a little bit unproven, but I thought he was going to command more on the market. I thought another team would be willing to give him more than $3.3 million, and maybe he recognized this was a good opportunity for him here in Chicago. I don't know what the situation was. Maybe the Blackhawks were surprised that that's only what it costs to get Laurent Brossoit. I don't know, but I just didn't expect a goalie of this level to be a realistic option for them. But I'm glad that it is, because it's going to fill a huge need here for the Blackhawks. It's a short two-year deal. Drew Commesso is going to be marinating down in Rockford over that time anyway. Peter Mrazek's contract comes off the books at the same point in time, so it's not going to hinder the goaltending development in the organization whatsoever by making this move, and addresses a huge need. Still got more to come, though. Next, Alec Martinez, baby. 1 year, $4 million deal, veteran, 6'1", 210-pound left-handed defenseman who has been around, a 15-year NHL vet, of course, played all those years with the Los Angeles Kings, a 2-time Stanley Cup champion there, and then has spent the last 4.5 years with the Vegas Golden Knights, where he also helped them win a Stanley Cup championship. So a 3-time Stanley Cup winner, a guy who's been there, done that, played for a lot of great teams, and is still playing great hockey at his age. And I think this deal makes sense because it's a 1-year deal. Now, I thought the Blackhawks were going to go after a right-handed defenseman to shore things up for Kevin Kurchinski, but Brett Pesce, Alexander Carrier didn't wind up hitting the open market, right? Like the options that I kind of laid out for the Blackhawks that made sense. Ultimately, those guys went on to sign deals with term and high AAV, and that just wasn't naturally going to fit with what the Blackhawks were trying to do. However, Alec Martinez, if you know a lot about him, you know that he's capable of playing on his off wing, and he played a lot with Shea Theodore with the Vegas Golden Knights, who's also a left-handed defenseman that left Alec Martinez playing on his right-hand side. I envision he's going to do the absolute same thing here with Kevin Korchinski, who, funny enough, also played for the Seattle Thunderbirds like Shea Theodore did, and has said that he modeled his game after Shea Theodore. So a savvy little move there by the Blackhawks front office. Alec Martinez doesn't provide much offensively anymore, right? He only had 17 points, 4 goals and 3 assists in 55 games for Vegas this past year. Has had under 20 points in 3 of his last 4 seasons as well, but he'll block shots, he'll play in defensive-minded situations, and he'll kill penalties. That's what he's brought here to do, and he's still one of the best in the business in those areas. So this was a solid signing here, in my opinion, by Kyle Davidson. I gave this one an A-. I would have preferred that they brought in a younger right-handed defenseman, but that didn't seem like a feasible option with the way that the market transpired here today. This is an easy 1-year deal for Alec Martinez that really doesn't provide much risk. I do have some concerns about his health and the injury woes, but at 1 year, you just kind of keep your fingers crossed, hope that he'll be healthy, and do some good things for the development of Kevin Korchinski, Wyatt Kaiser, Ethan Del Mastro, Alex Vlasic, all of those young guys. So I really like this move, even though it wasn't the ideal RHD that I wanted the Blackhawks to go after. They also signed Patty Maroon, the big rig baby, on a 1-year, $1.3 million deal. Maroon is 6'3", 235 pounds, 6th-round pick way back in 2007. That's carved out a very nice career for himself, and is, of course, a 3-time Stanley Cup champion, twice with the Tampa Bay Lightning, once with the St. Louis Blues. This past year, he tallied 16 points, 4 goals, and 12 assists in 51 combined games for the Wild and the Boston Bruins. Spent the last 4 years prior to that with Tampa in a really good locker room. Has just been a guy who's been around a lot of great teams, around a lot of great players. Been there, done that. Yeah, his best days on the ice are behind him pretty clearly. He's also tallied less than 20 points in 3 of the last 4 years, but his experience here is really what's going to be pivotal. And you know that he's going to be a guy that's loved and respected in the locker room. He's just another guy who's going to come in here and shed great experience and show all these young guys kind of what it's like to play with the best, how it needs to be done in order to reach that level, right? That's really the impact that Pat Maroon is going to make on this team. And he doesn't have to be on the ice on a day-to-day basis to do that, right? You can healthy scratch him and not have to worry about that. He's still going to make his impact. He's still going to be a good guy in the locker room. And even when he does get on the ice, he's going to be someone that's going to be a thorn in the side, a pain to play against, willing to drop his gloves, to step up for his teammates, and can be a protector out there for some of the young guys. This is just another sandpaper veteran ad for the Blackhawks, like an Alec Martinez, like a Tyler Bertuzzi a little bit. He provides a sandpaper, not as much of a veteran presence, but they absolutely get that out of Patrick Maroon and Alec Martinez. They also get it out of this next guy as well, in Craig Smith. As far as the Pat Maroon deal goes, I give it a A-. It's not my favorite move, but I don't really see this going wrong in any way whatsoever at a cheap 1-year deal. I kind of feel the same thing about Craig Smith, who also signed a 1-year deal, a little bit lower than Maroon's at a flat $1 million. 6 foot, 200-pound forward. Again, more size that they're adding now here to the bottom 6 as well, not only the top 6. But Smith was a 4th-round pick for the Nashville Predators. A lot of Blackhawks fans probably remember him from his time there. He was drafted in 2009 and is actually a Madison, Wisconsin native. So I wonder if he grew up a Blackhawks fan. But this past year, his first year and only year with the Dallas Stars, he tallied 20 points, 11 goals, 9 assists in 75 games, was with Boston and Washington, had a cup of coffee with the Capitals in a couple of years prior, but is most known for the 3 years that he spent in Boston and then the 9 years that he spent with the Nashville Predators. But another guy who's going to add size and goal scoring in the bottom 6. It's clear the Blackhawks want to be more offensively capable in their bottom 6, bringing in Ilya Mikheyev, bringing in Craig Smith, and they want to be tougher to play against, not sacrificing any of the size. Smith 6 foot. So he provides that, and it's just another veteran guy to add in the locker room, someone who, like Maroon, doesn't have to play on a game-to-game basis. You can healthy scratch him. You can throw him on the third line when you need goals. like Maroon. If you're playing against a tough team where you need the physicality, you could throw those two guys in the lineup, right? So those kinds of moves made sense to round things out in the bottom six. And then last but certainly not least, I was getting worried there for a little bit, Blackhawks fans. Joey Anderson didn't sign his qualifying offer, which, didn't mean that he wasn't going to resign with the Blackhawks. But usually when that happens, it kind of doesn't wind up working that way. It took a while for Joey Anderson's signing to get announced, but it finally wound up happening. The final domino to fall here on an eventful day for the Blackhawks. It's Joey Anderson coming back on a 2-year, $800,000 cheap $800,000 deal per year. We're familiar with him at this point, right? 6 foot, 210-pound winger who's known for his defensive capabilities, really became part of the shutdown trio for the Blackhawks this past year, along with Jason Dickinson, really trusted upon with the coaching staff, and put up career highs offensively as well. That's not what he's ever going to be known for, right? But someone who can chip in offensively, has good size, good hustle on the back check, responsible defensively, and comes back at a cheap deal, and you're not going to feel bad about healthy scratching Joey Anderson. When he can get into the lineup, he's capable of making his presence felt. So this grade is an absolute A+ to me. Craig Smith signing, by the way, I give it a B. But all in all, in terms of recapping this hectic first day of free agency for the Blackhawks, I think you got to give it an A. I think it was a pleasantly surprising first day of free agency out of the Chicago Blackhawks, and it's clear what they wanted to do, right? They wanted to add some more skill up front. They did that by bringing in Teuvo Teravainen and Tyler Bertuzzi. I quite honestly thought they were only going to have room for one of those two guys, but kind of get the best of both worlds there. Teravainen provides more skill. Bertuzzi provides a little bit more sandpaper. They're both capable offensive players to add to the top six. They also check off a box in Alec Martinez, shoring things up on the second pairing with Kevin Korchinski. They signed a much better backup goaltender than I envisioned being capable in Laurent Brossoit. Oh, yeah, and they added Pat Maroon, Craig Smith, and brought back Joey Anderson. I did not see the Blackhawks kind of going on this much of an active path over the last couple of weeks, clearly based on my previews, but I'm very happy that they did ultimately. They went and they got some size, they got some sandpaper, they got some veteran experience, they got more skilled up front. I think this was a big-time win of a day for the Chicago Blackhawks. Altogether, I'm giving general manager Kyle Davidson an A for his performance on day one of free agency here on July 1st. Go and let me know what grade you would give GM Kyle Davidson for all the moves that he made here as the free agent market opened this morning. Please be sure to share your thoughts down below in the comment section. But those are my thoughts on a hectic first day of free agency from the Chicago Blackhawks. Coming up in just a moment, though, don't go anywhere because, of course, I haven't had an episode come out since Saturday. That means I have to dive into all the picks that the Blackhawks made on day 2 of the 2024 NHL Draft. But first, I got to talk to you all real quick about the fine folks over at FanDuel. I love sports, and I love them so much that I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs have unfortunately now wrapped up, the Stanley Cup playoffs, the NBA Finals have come and gone. We now have fewer games, and the sports just aren't sportsing like I want them to. However, FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want, and all I have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime that I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking you all up with a big boost or a bonus on a daily basis. That's right. There's something for everyone every single day, all summer long. Be sure to go and check out FanDuel. The Cubs, the White Sox, I know they're not playing the best baseball, but there's still a lot of season to go. Maybe, well, the Sox are probably toast. But as for the Cubs fans out there, maybe they'll be able to string something together. Betting on the Cubs can be more fun by checking out FanDuel. They'll give you a boost. They'll give you a bonus every single day, all summer long. All you got to do is check out FanDuel.com/lockedon again to get daily boosts and bonuses. FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Segment 2, not only do I have to break down all of the Blackhawks free agent signings here on today's episode, but I also still have to get into all of their picks from day 2 of the 2024 NHL Draft that went down on Saturday. And kind of like how I'm feeling right now following all the signings they made here today, I was very, very stoked by the selections that the Blackhawks made on the second day of the 2024 NHL Draft. And quite honestly, the selections that they made on the second day, obviously they don't have the upside. They're not going to be as notable as the first round selections, but I kind of like the day that GM Kyle Davidson and his staff had on Saturday better than what they did on Friday in terms of the player types and the swings that they took on some of these guys. I'll go ahead and get into it here, starting with the first selection that the Blackhawks made on day 2. Didn't come until the third round because, of course, they traded the 34th and the 50th overall picks to the Carolina Hurricanes to get back in the first round at number 27. They wound up selecting Marek Vanacker. Again, a reminder, if you want to hear my thoughts on any of those first 3 picks that the Blackhawks made, you can go and find that episode easily on the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel. It is currently pinned to the channel, and make sure you subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube as well if you haven't done so already. But things kicked off for the Blackhawks with the 67th overall pick in the third round, and we saw them select John Mustard, baby. What a name. 6'1", 185-pound winger who actually in his post-draft interview said he played wing for the first time this past year, but would like to go back to center. I don't know if that's exactly what the Blackhawks would prefer considering all the depth that they have down the middle, but it is nice to know that Mustard is capable of having that versatility. Still a very young kid, by the way, one of the younger players in this draft, as he's not going to turn 18 until late August. And as far as the grades go, the highest grade that he received from any of the scouts or analysts that I pay attention to and mention here on the show, the highest grade that he got was when he was ranked 39th, according to Chris Peters. But Mustard is coming off a year in which he had 29 goals and 27 assists for 56 points in 60 USHL games for the Waterloo Blackhawks. And he's also going to be attending the University of Providence in the fall with Tage Harding, assuming he goes back there for his senior season. But in terms of Mustard's makeup, first and foremost, he's a really good skater for a player of his size, one of the best skaters in the entire draft class, and he has some really good goal scoring abilities. I think that's going to be his best offensive attribute. I think he's going to be more of a sniper than a goal scorer. But a good offensive makeup and a really high ceiling because of his skating abilities. And if you tuned into the show when I went through some of my mock drafts, 2 of them in particular actually had the Blackhawks taking John Mustard with the 50th overall pick in the second round. So for them to get him at number 67 in the third, I think is excellent value. I thought this was a really sharp pick by the Blackhawks, and it just makes sense to have John Mustard in Chicago. I mean, come on. It's just a great Chicago name that the fans are going to love. No ketchup allowed in Chicago. And as far as elite prospects go, I did want to point this out. EP always posts on X after all of these selections, shades of, in terms of who this player kind of shows you a little bit of a shade of. And for John Mustard, the player that they had was shades of Anthony Duclair, which is someone that us Blackhawks fans are a little bit familiar with. I know he's bounced around to numerous teams and had a short stint here in Chicago, but someone who can score goals, someone who plays with a lot of speed. And Chris Peters thinks that John Mustard does have top 6 abilities because of those 2 offensive attributes. So we'll see how he puts it together over these next couple of years with the University of Providence. But I really like this pick by the Blackhawks at number 67. I also like their pick at number 72 as well. AJ Spellacy, 6'3", 200-pound center. And when you look at that kind of size, you think, oh, well, he's probably playing a huge power forward game. Well, actually, AJ Spellacy is, quote, noted fastest man in the CHL. He's got absolute burners for a player of his size. Just turned 18 back in February. The highest grade that he had was ranked 64th by Elite Prospects. This past year, spent it with the Windsor Spitfires in the OHL. He had 38 points, 21 goals, and 17 assists in 67 games worth of action. His second year in the OHL, the shades of here for AJ Spellacy was Miles Wood or Josh Anderson, according to Elite Prospects. A couple of names that I like to hear, and that's because, again, Spellacy plays with a lot of speed. He has a lot of size, good goal-scoring abilities, not a ton of playmaking. His ceiling is capped a little bit, but there is upside there, again, because of the speed that he plays with. And with the NHL only getting faster and faster and faster, you like to have a lot of prospects with speed. No surprise that Kyle Davidson has gone in that direction so many times over the years. And we saw him go the same direction again with the 92nd overall pick. And they actually traded with the Carolina Hurricanes for a second time here in this draft in order to get that selection. They traded a 2025 third to get the 92nd overall pick in this year's draft, and they selected Jack Pridham. Again, similar kind of makeup, 6'1", 180-pound winger. He's actually the son of current Toronto Maple Leafs assistant general manager Brandon Pridham. Is an overager as he turned 19 back in October. The highest ranking he had was 71st by Elite Prospects, 49 points, 23 goals, and 26 assists in 54 BCHL games for the West Kelowna Warriors. So maybe not the most typical path, but he is going to be playing college hockey next year at a program the Blackhawks are oh so familiar with, Boston University. He's going to be a teammate with perhaps Terrier captain Ryan Green in the fall. But again, like Spellacy, like John Mustard, it's all about the speed with Jack Pridham. Another one of the faster players in this entire draft class. It seems like in the later rounds in particular, the Blackhawks certainly have a type. It's size and speed, because when you have those two things, you do have upside. And because of these first three selections on day two, it was funny to see Blackhawks chief scout Mike Donaghy say that he got a few texts from a couple people saying they're trying to build the fastest team in the league. Yes, that is the goal. Have the speed up front, have the size on the back end. We've seen a lot of teams win the Stanley Cup with that sort of makeup over the years. I like to see that Kyle Davidson has gone in that direction. I think it makes sense to go with those types of swings on day two, upside types of plays. I would have liked to see them do that a bit more on day one, but happy to see them do it on day two. Final two selections that the Hawks made: Joel Svensson, their lone selection in the fifth round at number 138, 6'1", 185-pound winger. Like Jack Pridham, is an overager as he turned 19 in April and had 33 points, 24 goals, and 9 assists in 25 Swedish U20 league games. 24 goals in 25 games. The guy can absolutely rifle the biscuit. Also did get a little bit of a taste of SHL action. Tallied 1 assist in 7 games there for the Vax Joe Lakers, which is a system over in the SHL that the Blackhawks are quite familiar with. And it seems that Svensson is going to be in the SHL next year full-time. Fingers crossed on that, as I'm sure that's what the Blackhawks want to be the next best step in his development. But another guy who's got some good goal-scoring abilities, good two-way play, has a little bit of size there. Okay pick here in the fifth round, I think. And then to round things out at number 163, Ty Henry, the lone pick for the Blackhawks in the sixth round, a 6'3", 200-pound left-handed defenseman who's going to turn 18 later on this month, and had 7 points, all assists in 54 OHL games with the Erie Otters, a teammate of Martin Misiak. So the Blackhawks, I'm sure, got a lot of looks at Ty Henry, someone who's not going to provide you, any offense whatsoever if he's tallying 7 points and over 50 OHL games, but someone who's listed as a good skater for a player of his size, has good defensive prowess. Someone you take a gamble on in the seventh round. I know those selections don't, or I guess this is the sixth round, excuse me. I know those selections don't tend to pan out, but clearly the Blackhawks wanted to add more size on their back end. That's where they felt they should take the gamble at. So not opposed with either of these last two selections, but that takes care of the 5 picks that the Blackhawks made on day 2 of the 2024 NHL Draft. Go and let me know in the comment section down below, out of those 5 players, who is your favorite that the Blackhawks selected? Who's your Nick Lardis from a couple years ago, if you will? So let me know your thoughts from last year, actually. Let me know your thoughts on that down below in the comment section. But coming up in just a minute, before I wrap things up, I will dish out the final grade that I give Blackhawks GM Kyle Davidson and his staff for his performance at the 2024 NHL Draft. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, be sure to go in, smash that like button, comment down below, and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. Thank you very much. And also, be sure to go and check out the new Locked On Sports Today, because Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. I'm such a potato. That was up the whole entire second segment. Sometimes I shake my own head. It has been a chaotic last handful of days, and that reminds me as well. This is going to set me on another tangent, right? I saw someone in the comment section. I haven't been able to reply to it yet, but someone said, Jack, Sasha Boisvert is going to North Dakota, not Notre Dame. I know that, okay? I know that. I outlined that when I went through Sasha Boisvert's profile. The thing is, I go on camera every day for 30 to 40 minutes a day, sometimes more because I do a golf podcast as well, and I talk a lot in front of a camera. And I got a lot of information going on in my head. And that was a very hectic couple of days. The NHL Draft, day 1, day 2, right? Not a lot of sleep for your boy, a lot of content coming out. Sometimes I make mistakes. I'm not going to say everything perfectly all the time. Yes, I am capable of making mistakes. Please don't be that guy to go and jump on it in the comment section. It's just kind of annoying. I hate to say that. But be sure to go and check out the new Locked On Sports Today on YouTube. I'm just gonna skip that. I apologize, Lockdown. It was not done very well. Segment 3. Before I wrap things up here today, my mind is melting. I need to get off recording. I did want to give out one final grade, though, to General Manager Kyle Davidson for the selections that he made in the 2024 NHL Draft. Kind of talk about things as a whole now that everything has come and went. As far as the best picks go, the picks that I like the most that Davidson made in the draft, I like Artem Levshinov. I don't like Levshinov over Demidov, but I like Artem Levshinov, the player. And I've made that very clear when doing these shows, when I've been part of the Demidov hype train that's obviously come and went itself now, to preface that it wasn't because I didn't like Artem Levshinov, the player. It was just the position the Blackhawks were in and the upside potential. I wanted them to swing upside. I thought they were in a position to swing upside, and they ultimately didn't. And it felt like they kind of did that with both the 2nd and the 18th overall pick there with Sasha Boisvert. But I do like Artem Levshinov, the player. He's going to provide size on the right-hand side. That is a huge need for the Blackhawks on their back end. Plays a game that's going to translate to this level, a capable puck mover, someone who moves well for his size, and I think is already a capable defender when he is in the right spot. I think he's offensive minded, but I think he's going to be a very sound two-way type of player. So I really like Artem Levshinov, the player that the Blackhawks got. He is the best defenseman prospect that they have in their organization now that Kevin Korchinski has graduated from that status. I also like Marek Vanacker. I think that pick just makes a lot of sense. Now, maybe it was a little bit too early, but considering how his draft stock was rising, I wouldn't have been surprised if he wasn't there at number 34. And there were multiple scouts and analysts that had him as a first-round grade. So some people thought that it was a little bit much for the Blackhawks to give up 34 and 50 to go and make that selection. I personally didn't. I think Vanacker, based on the development that he had this last year and as a young player, his first year in the OHL, like he was kind of or his second year in the OHL, excuse me, compared to what he did in his first year, like the roles that he took on and the jack of all trades type of player that he was on the penalty kill, the power play unit, the speed that he plays with, the playmaking development as well. Like the goal scoring was always kind of the offensive characteristic that stood out. He's added more and more layers to that while playing with good speed. He's going to have to get bigger, but I think this is the makeup of a guy who could be a solid NHLer in a lot of different ways. So I like the Marek Vanacker selection. I absolutely loved the John Mustard selection at number 67. I think it's funny, 2 years in a row, number 67 has done the Blackhawks very well in terms of value. John Mustard at 67, Nick Lardis at 67 the year prior. I mean, that's probably even crazier than Mustard falling to 67, but both of those picks, I think, in back-to-back years for the Hawks in the third round have been outstanding. John Mustard, quite honestly, might be my favorite pick of the draft for the Blackhawks. And then AJ Spellacy, I think, makes a lot of sense, too. I think even though the playmaking is capped, the size and the speed is going to give this guy a chance to play in the NHL. And with that speed, I know the playmaking is never going to be over the top, but that gives him a better chance to develop into maybe an Andreas Athanasiou type of player one day. because he's just so fast. He's going to give himself opportunities. The playmaking might not be there, but if he can put pucks in the back of the net with his speed, he's got a chance to be a 20-goal scorer at the next level. So I love a pick like that at 72. As far as my worst picks, the only one I really had a gripe with, man, was Sasha Boisvert at number 18. And again, I wasn't even really down on the player, right? Like, I had Boisvert ranked 22nd in this year's draft class. It was just who he was there compared to and what I felt like the Blackhawks could have gotten out of that pick. They could have gotten Liam Greentree, who I think is the better power forward than Sasha Boisvert, or they could have gone Cole Yzerman. They could have gone with goal scoring upside. Like, for the opportunity to come out of this draft with Yzerman and Levshinov, to me, that would have been such a great opportunity for the Blackhawks. I would have also rather had Michael Hage over Sasha Boisvert as well. I just think Hage has the higher offensive ceiling. Boisvert is a little bit capped because of the lack of foot speed and the lack of playmaking there. And I know he's a hard worker. He's got good size. He's got the desire to get better. He's going to North Dakota, which I know is a prestigious program. I know he's not going to Notre Dame. I would have preferred any of those three guys. More specifically, I would have preferred Cole Yzerman or Liam Greentree over Sasha Boisvert. So that was the only pick that really kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I think Jack Pridham, they probably could have gotten a little bit later, but there's no guarantee on that. I know most people had him as like a late fourth to early fifth round grade. So that would be my gripe there. But other than that, man, no complaints about the Blackhawks 2024 NHL Draft. I was really happy with what they did on day 2. I like the trade up to go and get Marek Vanacker. I like the selection of Levshinov. I don't love it over Demidov, but I like the player that they got. The only real gripe I have was with what they did at number 18. But they still came out with a handful of good players. Kyle Davidson got guys that fit the mold that he likes to get. So all in all, I'm going to give the Blackhawks a B+ for their performance at the 2024 NHL Draft. I give Kyle Davidson an A for what he did on day 1 of free agency. I'm going to give him a B+ for what he did as a whole at the 2024 NHL Draft. Be sure to jump in the comment section and let me know what grade you would give KD for what he did at the NHL Draft and what he did in free agency. I always enjoy having these discussions with all of you down in the comment section down below. That's going to wrap up today's episode, though, of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all for joining me on the show. Be sure to go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube right now, and that way you can get the latest episode as soon as it becomes available each and every day. Go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free right now, wherever you may be listening to your podcast, and that way you'll be able to tune in on a daily basis for free wherever you may listen. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can find me on X at Jack Bushman2. I'm just a disaster today, guys. I apologize. I hope that show wasn't just a bunch of ramble-jamble, but there was a lot to get into. Tomorrow, we'll have a little bit more structure. I'm going to go through the Blackhawks forward group and get into a way too early prediction of their forward lines. Be sure to be on the lookout for that. As always, though, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your Monday. Stay safe. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.